Today, we're looking at a blue ink by Montegrappa Dark Blue. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, down below in the description, there's timestamps of all the parts of the video, and if you are in a hurry, you can skip around, but if you got the time, I'd appreciate you if you check out the entire video. You can also follow me over on Instagram, and if you're new here and like ink reviews, I would invite you to subscribe. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then ink up this Nimicine Singularity with a fine nib. I write with it for a day. I then use it to take the notes for this video. In order to have some standardization in my writing samples, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I do test other papers, but those will show up later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, but it does offer a lot of very nice shading. Dark starts darker, gets lighter, gets very dark at the K. Very dark in terms of the tones of this ink. Montegrappa works its way from dark to medium to dark to medium to dark to medium. It just keeps going back and forth. Absolutely fantastic. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub with no feather spread. I take that back. It's slightly lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, and still a lot of great shading. Brown starts dark, works its way light. Fox starts medium, gets light, gets dark. Over is a nice very dark word. Or over, nice. Over, light to dark. The is a nice very dark word. 11 seconds to dry. Medium is slightly lighter than the extra fine, but no feather spread, halo sheen, still great shading. Fox, from light to dark. Lazy. Every time the pen crosses over its previous writing, it gets much darker, like on the bottom of the L, the back of the A. It's very nice here. Over starts nice and light, works its way dark. 15 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us plenty of color variation, and we got plenty. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and it does offer some very nice shading. Look at what's going on in blue. Dark to light to mid to dark. Beautiful. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub. It has no feather spread, halo sheen, and still a lot of great shading. The quick goes mid-tone to light to dark at the K. Brown starts dark and gets light. Fox starts very light and gets dark. 18 seconds to dry. Nice writing with this. The medium is a little darker than the extra fine, not quite as dark as the stub. It has no feather spread, halo sheen, and it also provides very nice shading. Brown starting dark, working its way lighter, back to very dark on the N. Fox starts light and gets dark. Beautiful. 25 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both show us some color variation, looking far left to far right. I think we see a little more in the writing than we do in the scrubby. Rhodia, no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, shading in the form of some darker letters, like the K in dark. Okay? The A in Montegrappa. Shading comes more in the form of some much darker letters here. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, shading spots. Nice. Quick starts a little darker on the bottom of the Q, gets lighter, gets very dark at the K. Brown starts dark and gets light. Nice. Over starts light and gets dark. 12 seconds to dry. Medium is a little darker than the extra fine, not quite as dark as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and yes, still some very good shading spots. Over starts dark, gets lighter, gets dark on the bottom of the E, lighter into the R, dark into the bottom of the R. Very nice stuff. 16 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine shows a lot more color variation than the medium. The medium shows almost none. However, in both the writing samples, we did get a lot of color variation. I agree with Vita. I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And on the very bottom, we see this kind of light purpley tone. Moving up from there, we see this blue come in, and the blue is very strong, standing out against that kind of purpley gray tone. But what's interesting is that purpley gray that was on the bottom is also above the blue. It's the same tone, so it's moved completely past the blue, but the blue is strong enough to show itself over it. Now the one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And that gray purpley tone, very darkened there on the line on the bottom. It's eating up a bunch of the blue. Now you see a little blue line all the way across, and then you see what's left of that gray purpley tone push its way up. So it's interesting that the blue is strong enough to stand out like that, but I really think that this is the same single gray tone. But I'm expecting some resistance here. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. Now, I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it did not have an issue with being re-wet at all. It was really unaffected. Great for note-taking. Water was really ineffective. It didn't do anything to this ink. It barely noticed. The same happened for pen flush. It really only moved a little bit of the top darkest that was there away, but it left a ton behind. Now the 1/3 bleach solution did completely remove it from the page. Should you need to use that to get it out of your pen, just make sure you flush your pen with water so you don't rust your metal bits. I test ink viscosity or flow by using a tilt test, and I'll link that somewhere here. And for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Put the data onto a bell curve or standard deviation for it to be easily understood. Montegrappa's Dark Blue has a viscosity of 3.18, making this a drier ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples, and for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Montegrappa's Dark Blue has an average dry time of 16 seconds, making it absolutely normal. Instead of finding inks that look like Montegrappa's Dark Blue, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. Being that this is a much lighter blue, I really wanted a nice pink to go with it, and I chose Krishna's Bauhimia. The second writing sample is done on the yellow Rhodia, white lines, and black and red notebook. We're looking at this on the yellow Rhodia paper to see what kind of difference that the yellow background can really have on the tone of this ink, and I'm hoping it brings in a little bit more character with it. And the thing is, despite being a very light blue, called dark blue, it's not making a tremendous difference. It makes it unaffected. I'm very shocked by that, how it's really got no effect on it. I was expecting to get kind of a green or teal tone here, but not at all. So this is quite opaque. Black and red notebook. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, some darker shading spots, but that's about it, like the A in Montegrappa, the K in dark. The extra fine is slightly lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen. The only shading shows up again in the form of a couple darker letters, the R in brown, the K in quick, okay, the Z in lazy, but that's about it. 6 seconds to dry. Now medium is much darker than the extra fine or the stub. It has no feather spread, halo sheen, and it does offer better shading spots, as in more of those darker, lighter letters. Like the J in jumps is much lighter than the rest of the word, but look at what happens when the P and the L of lazy touch. Very dark and there. So it has an ability to do it, like quick is the K is very dark, but the rest of the word is a midtone, so it has an ability to really shade well. 8 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows us some color variation, although we don't see a whole lot up there. The medium doesn't really show us any color variation, although we see it has an ability in the writing. Last up is white lines. No bleeding, no ghosting. This paper's found a lot of inks that do very well with it. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a lot lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. 4 seconds to dry. The medium is quite a bit darker than the extra fine, just a tad lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. 5 seconds to dry. What's interesting is the scrubby of the extra fine shows a lot of color variation, even though we got none. The scrubby of the medium shows a little bit of color variation, far left to right, and we got none. And that is all that I have for the writing sample. So what do I think of Montegrappa Dark Blue? It does give nice shading in just about every pen that I used it in, but where I get really held up with is its name, how wrong named it is. It is not a dark blue, it is certainly a very light blue. They named it so wrong, they could have named this ink orange. So what nib and pen will give the best writing experience with this ink? You definitely need a very wet pen in order to put enough ink down to make this color interesting and readable on the page. A dry pen just is dull and boring here. If you've enjoyed this video and made it this far, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. And if you didn't like it, give me a thumbs down and tell me why. Thanks for watching.